All right, let's get into one of the most wild and profound stories in the entire Buddhist tradition, coming straight from the Aṅgulimāla Sutra. This is a story that kicks off with pure terror, but it ends with a twist that's going to challenge everything you think you know about good and evil.
It all started with this, a simple, horrifying mission. And this one task turned an entire kingdom into his personal hunting ground, and it turned one man into a monster so feared he became a legend.
And that's the real mystery here, isn't it? Because the man who needed 1,000 fingers, well, he wasn't born this way. He was actually born a genius. So let's peel back the layers and figure out how something like this could even happen.
So, our story really starts at the absolute peak of his reign of terror. He was like a force of nature, an unstoppable killer who was just one single victim away from finishing his gruesome collection.
So his name, Aṅgulimāla, it literally means finger garland. And yeah, that's exactly what he wore, a necklace made from the fingers of the people he murdered. He'd already gathered 999, and the entire region was just paralyzed with fear. I mean, the texts say his reputation was so terrifying that even powerful gods and demons trembled when they heard his name. He was the absolute picture of pure destruction. So, where in the world did this monster come from? Well, this is where the story takes its first big turn. See, Aṅgulimāla wasn't his real name. He was once a young man with a future so bright it was practically blinding.
Before all this, before he was Aṅgulimāla, he was known as All-World Seen, a name he got because his potential was just incredible. He was the star pupil of a famous teacher, described as brilliant, humble, totally dedicated. Now just look at the contrast on this slide. How do you get from that guy to this task? Well, the answer is a heartbreaking, classic story of betrayal.
Yeah, it was a complete setup. The teacher's wife became obsessed with the young scholar and made a move on him. And he, being a good and virtuous guy, gently turned her down, telling her he saw her as a mother figure. Well, she was humiliated, so she went straight to her husband and lied, accusing the student of assaulting her. The teacher, just blinded by rage, completely believed her and came up with this twisted punishment that was basically a death sentence. Go kill 1,000 people and bring me their fingers. And this, he said, was the only way he could atone.
And so, the dutiful student, unbelievably, began his horrific task. He became Aṅgulimāla, the man who couldn't be stopped. But just as he was about to claim that final, fateful victim, another person walked into the forest, the Buddha.
And get this for a horrifying detail. His own mother, worried that he was starving out in the wilderness, had come to find him and bring him food. In his bloodlust, he didn't see his mom. He just saw the final piece of his puzzle. He raised his sword to kill her, and it was at that exact moment the Buddha appeared, literally stepping right between the killer and his mother.
Now, Aṅgulimāla, furious at this interruption, just charges after the Buddha, but something really strange starts to happen. Even though the Buddha is just walking calmly, Aṅgulimāla can't catch him no matter how fast he runs. He's completely exhausted and confused, and he just screams at the monk to stop.
And the Buddha's reply, wow, this is the moment everything changes. His response wasn't about physical walking. He says, I have already stopped. It is you who have not. He was talking about stopping the endless cycle of violence, of hatred, of suffering. And those words, they hit Aṅgulimāla like a bolt of lightning. And in that one instant, all his murderous rage just collapsed.
And just like that, the transformation was immediate and it was total. The words of an enlightened being had completely shattered the killer's world, and what was left underneath was the repentant scholar he used to be.
You can just picture it. He throws down his sword, that gruesome garland of fingers falls to the ground. He just falls at the Buddha's feet, weeping with a guilt so deep it shook him to his core. He begged his mother for forgiveness for what he was about to do, and then, with absolutely nothing left of his old life, he asked to become a monk.
And what an amazing story of redemption, right? A mass murderer finds forgiveness and a new purpose. But if you think that's the whole point of the story, you are in for a huge surprise. This is where the Mahayana version of the story takes a sharp left turn into something truly mind-bending.
Because what happens next completely reframes the entire story. It wasn't just an act of redemption, it was an act of cosmic theater.
I mean, this is the logical question, right? You're probably thinking what I was thinking. Even if he's sorry, the weight of killing 999 people is just immense. How could someone with that kind of past ever be purified, let alone become a respected spiritual figure? Well, the sutra has a pretty radical answer.
So to understand this, we need to know about this key concept, upaya, or skillful means. It's this idea that a deeply enlightened being, a bodhisattva, might do something that looks totally bizarre, or unethical, or even evil from our normal point of view. But in reality, it's a carefully planned act of compassion, designed to teach a lesson so profound you couldn't learn it any other way.
And the sutra itself gives us the perfect analogy for this. Think about a great magician. They get on stage and they appear to do all these impossible, maybe even violent-looking things, but you know it's an illusion, right? It's all part of the show. The sutra suggests that Aṅgulimāla's rampage was exactly that, a divine illusion, a performance.
And here's the proof. Right after becoming a monk, Aṅgulimāla gets into these philosophical debates with the Buddha's most brilliant disciples and even with gods. And he doesn't just hold his own, he completely dominates them. At one point, he calls their wisdom tiny and mosquito-like. I mean, can you imagine? This is not the behavior of some newly repentant killer. This is a hidden master finally revealing who he really is.
And then, finally, the Buddha himself just drops the bombshell. He confirms that Aṅgulimāla was never some fallen scholar who needed saving. He was, and he always had been, a great bodhisattva, an enlightened being just as wise as any of the greatest figures in the cosmos, who took on the disguise of a killer to teach the world a lesson it would never, ever forget.
And that leaves us with this final, absolutely staggering question. The story of Aṅgulimāla forces us to wonder about the very nature of reality. It asks us to seriously consider that what we see as absolute evil might, from a much higher perspective, actually be a form of radical, compassionate teaching. What do you think?